Imagine you are the biggest pop star in the world. You have the money, the fame, and a vision that will change music history forever. And then, at the absolute height of your powers, you stop. You bury the tapes, you retreat into your bedroom, and you leave behind a masterpiece that remains a myth for over 40 years. This isn't just the story of a failed record. This is the story of Smile, the greatest what if in the history of rock and roll. Smile, the Beach Boys album that was never finished. In the early 1960s, the Beach Boys were one of the biggest pop acts in US. They released hit singles constantly. Almost every year came with a new album. In 1965, they even released 3 albums in 1 year. The band depended on hits. Touring income mattered. Radio mattered. Staying popular mattered. At the center of the band was Brian Wilson. Brian was the main songwriter and producer. He did not just write songs, he built sound. From early on, Brian lived under pressure. His father, Murray Wilson, was the band's first manager. He was controlling and often harsh. He criticized Brian constantly. Although Murray was fired in 1964, the fear of criticism stayed. Brian became extremely sensitive to conflict. That same year, Brian suffered a panic attack on a flight. Years of pressure came together at once. After that, he stopped touring. The other band members stayed on the road. Brian stayed in Los Angeles and worked in the studio. This changed everything. Brian now controlled the recordings. He treated the studio as an instrument. He layered harmonies. He shaped textures. In 1966, the Beach Boys released Pet Sounds. The album was emotional, introspective, full of doubt and vulnerability. It did not rely on happy singles. Sales in the United States were modest at first, but look where it stands in this day and age. Today, Pet Sounds is considered one of the greatest albums ever made. Brian did not want to repeat himself. He wanted to go further. He began a new project called Smile. Brian describes Smile as a teenage symphony to God. Not a religious album, but something emotional, innocent, and ambitious. Ambitious because Brian wanted to build the album from many fragments that would eventually flow into each other. As a theme, Brian wanted Smile to capture an idea of America. Not a single story, but a feeling of movement. From early America toward modern California. From the East Coast to the West Coast. Railroads, expansion, conflict, loss. To write the lyrics, Brian worked with Van Dyke Parks. Brian could write lyrics himself. But for Smile, he wanted poetic language, symbolic images, words that felt like paintings. The song Good Vibrations was recorded during the Smile sessions. It became a #1 hit. What you have to know is that it was not a normal pop song. It was built from fragments, recorded in different studios. It changed mood and structure. At the time, very few artists worked this way, mostly the Beatles. Other Smile songs went even further. Surf's Up was quiet and introspective. It dealt with time, loss, disillusionment. These themes were rare in pop music in 1966. The song Cabin Essence explored American expansion and its cost, dense harmonies, shifting structure, lyrics about railroads and progress. The song Heroes and Villains was fragmented and playful, a Western myth told in pieces, humor mixed with darkness. Together, these songs suggested what Smile could have been, not a collection of hits, but a major piece of art. Even unfinished, this music was years ahead of its time. Inside the band, tension grew. Mike Love openly questioned the lyrics. He worried about radio. He worried about touring. The band needed hits. Smile did not offer easy ones. At the same time, pressure came from outside. Capitol Records expected a new album. They did not cancel Smile, but they waited. And waiting added stress. Brian's mental health declined. During this period, Brian used a lot of acid. At first it felt inspiring. Later, it increased anxiety and paranoia. While Brian struggled with his fragments, he was constantly looking over his shoulder. The race for innovation was on, and his greatest rivals were the Beatles. In May 1967, the moment Brian feared finally arrived. The Beatles released Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. It was a cultural earthquake. When Brian heard the album, he was devastated. He felt the Beatles had reached the finish line first. Looking at the success of his rivals, he famously whispered, "They got there first." The pressure to top them turned into a paralyzing sense of defeat. The teenage symphony to God could no longer face the competition. By early 1967, everything collided. Ambition, doubt, pressure, fear of criticism. Brian slowed the sessions. Then he stopped. Smile was never finished. Instead, the band released Smiley Smile. Smiley Smile was not meant to complete Smile. It was meant to escape it. The album was simple, lo-fi, and relaxed. Brian could not face the Smile material anymore. It was tied to anxiety and failure. So Smile songs were released slowly, over time. Cabin Essence and Our Prayer appeared on 2020. Surf's Up finally appeared in 1971 on Surf's Up. Smile did not arrive as one album. It arrived in fragments. In the summer of 1967, the Monterey Pop Festival marked a turning point. The Beach Boys were invited to perform, but Brian Wilson pulled the band out. He felt unready. He feared comparison with newer acts. Monterey launched a new era of rock music. The Beach Boys were not part of it. They were not officially canceled. But culturally, they lost momentum. For decades, Smile remained unfinished. In 2011, the original Smile recordings were released as the Smile Sessions. For the first time, people could hear what Brian Wilson had recorded in 1966 and 1967. But this was not the Smile album as it would have been released then. There was no final track list, no final mixes, no final decisions. What we have is a reconstruction, a glimpse. Smile exists now, but the album it could have been remains a possibility. Thank you for watching. We are the Boys Next Door. We talk music.
Like and subscribe for more top 10s and other music videos.